The following is a presentation of the ForceCenter podcast feed.
From the center of the galaxy, this is the ForceCenter podcast feed, and this episode is one of our deep dives, our Bacta tank of talk. We're going to dive deep into the Bacta of Boba Fett. We're going to be discussing the great Disney Gallery episode that is going behind the scenes into the Bacta pod of Boba Fett, that great show. I'm Joseph Scrimshaw.
I'm Ken Napzok. We're sloshing around like we always say here, but this is the perfect episode to slosh around to some Bacta. Fun Disney Gallery. Can't wait to dive on in here with you today, my friend.
Yeah, me too. So let's get the preambles out of the way here. We got our Audible discussion, as we always have. We want to let you know that today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. We are continuing to recommend Brotherhood, the new Obi-Wan and Anakin story by author Mike Chen. If you want to check that out, you can download the free audiobook today by going to audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Again, that's audibletrial.com/ForceCenter for a free audiobook. It helps us and you get a free audio book. We are now going to go behind the Book of Boba Fett. I guess behind Disney Gallery, going behind the Book of Boba Fett. If you're not caught up, for Star Wars Day, May 4th, Disney Plus released a new episode in this ongoing behind-the-scenes series, Disney Gallery. And this episode is all about Book of Boba Fett. Ken, what was your overall reaction to this episode of Disney Gallery? We've kind of come to expect a certain perspective, a certain kind of discussion. Did this line up to what you expected? Was it more? What happened?
It's interesting that you start with that. Hey, we've kind of come to expect something about, and then the sentence goes on. But I kind of had just come to expect that one of these would be released that I almost wasn't as excited as I wanted to be for it when I finally. I didn't watch it on May the 4th. It took me a few days to actually get to it. And so I really enjoyed it, to be clear. But I remember thinking, I was like, I wasn't as emotionally moved by that one as I was other ones. Some of the first Mando ones had me in tears, Star Wars tears of joy. This one didn't move me. I just had a smile on my face. Oh, I was let down. That was kind of my initial reaction to it until I watched it the second time, until I kind of ruminated on what was in it. I don't know. That's just for me, just be like, all right, we're going to get a show. We're going to get it behind the scenes. And that's just kind of the package deal now. So I think it was so routine that I didn't open my heart fully to it at first. But once I did, man, a lot of fun stuff there, as always.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's really great. I think I maybe approached it in a different way. I think on Star Wars Day, I heard good things about it. I saw the tweets coming and I was like, oh no, I got, it's so great. I got so much Star Wars to do, but it's so great. I got to finish this, watch this. Oh, the Kenobi trailer. This is so great. So by the time all the tweeting and the podcasting was done and my wife got home and we were going to sit down and eat, I was just like, I'm so in the Star Wars zone. I really want to watch Disney Gallery, like on the television. And sometimes lately, for some things, I'll watch them first on my computer and I'll pause and I'll take notes as we go. And that's kind of the way I thought I was going to watch Disney Gallery. But it's just like, I just want to watch it on the couch, eating a burrito with my wife and experience it together. And this one hit me harder than I expected it to. And I don't know if it was kind of like the way I watched it or I so loved Book of Boba Fett. There was a lot of consternation and discussion and, different criticisms, which, some I agree with, some I disagree with. Everybody always has a right to them, but it was kind of there were moments where the conversation was very vitriolic. It was a hard moment for me because I was really enjoying what the show was doing and saying, even though I understood some of the criticisms and even agreed with some of them. That this special just kind of stripped all that away and returned me to what I loved about this show and gave me that great lift that these things can, where I just enjoyed the charm of the actors, the passion of the creators. And I'm going to be honest, I think that there's a lot in this special that was validating to the way that we've approached Book of Boba Fett on this show, We're certainly not unique. We didn't find any hidden treasure. I think what I got out of this is the artist expressed a lot of like, here's what we cared about. Here's what we were trying to wrestle with. Here's what we were maybe trying to express or ask the audience to ask about the characters. Here's what our intentions were. And it was just nice to look at the screen and go, we were picking up what you were laying down. And again, it's not about like we found a hidden treasure that this show is a puzzle and we solved it. It's not, I don't want to come across as I'm patting myself on the back for our punditry and our reactions. It was more like I got all these things from the show, and it was really lovely to hear the creators go, here's what we hope people get from the show. And at least my experience was, I did get that. Thanks for the gift.
Yeah. No, I know what you're saying, and we want to walk that line. I think we feel we're pretty good at what we do around these parts, but also I think what we do is just point at that and go, Star Wars is about hope. Did y'all get it? Did y'all? No, and no, I'm with you on that, and I want to be clear. Like I really, there's so much I enjoyed about this, and I'm going to dive in. I don't have a negative view of this thing. My standards were, well, I didn't cry, so maybe then I watched it again just before we're recording here today, and just ate up so much of it there, and it is just you're exposed to the heart of the show because the creators are sharing their heart, and that's always a great thing in Star Wars to just see on display.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to discuss some specific moments, some revelations, some confirmations. I kind of thought this particular Disney gallery was a little richer with actual new information or the creators kind of sharing a specific perspective. So I wrote up the notes, and I had written up a podcast that it would take us 4 hours to do. So I did cut some stuff from time. So if you really enjoyed this Disney Gallery episode, we're going to talk about a lot, but maybe not everything, just in the spirit of time. So with that caveat out of the way, let's dive in. This episode of Disney Gallery kicks off with director and co-producer Robert Rodriguez talking to the cast and crew, saying how inspired he is that everything they're doing on this Boba Fett show started with one person, George Lucas, writing down the Star Wars on a piece of paper, and how Rodriguez directly links that to his own career as an indie filmmaker. That's the beginning of this discussion. What do you think about this framing of Star Wars as an indie film is one idea that gives life to endless new ideas?
I think it's just so accurate. It's so true. And it's also weird. Even George would agree, I'm this rebel. And then I kind of built a film studio up around me. And therefore, I think it's incorrect to say he became what he was against. I don't think that's the exact right way to look at it. But Star Wars is the prequels themselves have been referred to as the most expensive independent films of all time, right? We've heard that a lot. So I think the spirit's always there. And I have just, I think a lot of us have, when I say us, like our generation, Joseph, have an interesting, if you're in entertainment and writing or filmmaking, you might have an interesting relationship with Robert Rodriguez, because he's the rebel without a crew guy,
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time in my college days studying screenwriting and filmmaking, and he was like the guy at the time. Yes, Tarantino and Kevin Smith with Clerks, all that stuff was big, but like there was also this guy doing amazing things for $5,000 on the weekend, and to have him talk about the spirit of Star Wars, and it is one guy and a pad of paper in a room. It's one person on set coming up with ideas. I think as big as Star Wars is, and it's gigantic, and as much as it can feel like big tentpole filmmaking, because, hey, it is, and it's all for profit, I still think every property puts out these ideas that do strike that chord of one person and a pad of paper and an idea. And I love kind of starting the show with that.
Yeah, I really love that too, and I think there is so much discussion about Lucasfilm is a large company owned by an even larger company, Disney. So I think there is an effort to say but let's look at the genesis of this. Let's look at how we're conducting ourselves as we create new content, and what do we mean by the spirit of indie filmmaking, right? I think for me, it's a great way to discuss Star Wars. He managed to sell not the idea of Star Wars, but to sell Alan Ladd Jr.'s belief in him, George Lucas. but it was something that he had to fight for, right? And I think it's such a great conversation because Lucas is the big bang, right? It's his idea, and nothing else comes unless he has that idea. But then Lucas himself is always, giving credit to all of the other visionaries, that original trilogy, Ben Burt, John Williams, Ralph McQuarrie, John Molo, the actors. Maybe Lucas himself doesn't give as much credit to Marsha Lucas, but we know her contribution. And on and on and on. It's obviously like, it starts with this one person, and then there's this big bang of all these other creators who get involved. But I still think Indy is the right framing because he's had to go through so much through both the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy to say, I really have a vision and I'm going to make it happen come hell or high water, even down to things that people disagree with, like the special editions of like, I have a vision and I want it to happen. And even though I am successful and I have started my own company and I could be seen as the establishment now, I'm still fighting for my vision. And a clear celebration from both Lucas and in this Rodriguez and everybody else of a joy at collaboration, but this collaboration in effort of staying true to a vision.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. Yeah, and this, when we talk about like the spirit of independent filmmaking, it doesn't just mean grabbing your iPhone and $20 and telling a story. To me, it is outside the box in terms of story, in terms of your creative drive and to tell your story, right? That's an indie film. Oh, that's a very indie film. Just means it's so undeniably personal and so undeniably takes big risks, that what if question. And I think Boba Fett, for better or worse, and I'm with you on sometimes I always describe the show as very stubborn.
Yeah.
Very stubborn. But you all have heard me say this too many times. I'll try to make this the last time I say it, but like, go watch Swingers. Go watch Swingers. That is an indie film with Doug Liman directing. Yes, but it is the first time that Jon Favreau sat down at his apartment. I could tell you the exact intersection. Joseph could too. And just wrote something without any interference. The only thing, it was just his story to tell. And I think that carries on to Boba Fett.
I think so too. And I think a part of the indie thing that's being celebrated in this little scene is just the idea of, let's find a way. We got this idea, we're in love with it, so let's find a way. I think to me, it connects to a moment that happens later where Rodriguez is talking about, I have this idea for the Tatooine sand date, but it's over Zoom and I can't. So I'm going to just, I'm going to previs with action figures. I'm going to go personally build a model of the sand ape. I'm going to film myself as a sand ape. I'm just going to find a way to do it. And that was really inspiring to me. I think maybe that starting that way is what really hooked me on this of, I haven't done as much of it, but I have, been a producer in the past, and particularly when I'm young, just finding a way is really thrilling. I did a play early in my career that I wrote, and I needed a Chihuahua, and I built one out of paper, wire, duct tape, and googly eyes. And my dad was always so kind about it. He's like, I can't believe this. You needed a Chihuahua. You couldn't have a live one. You can't buy one at a store, and you just made one. And I think about that and wanting to keep that spirit alive of, if you got an idea, there's a way.
Yeah, and that's an accurate depiction of a Chihuahua, as you know, with one in your life and your past as well. So yeah, good job.
Yeah. So that was a great way to kick this off. Great kickoff to our discussion. Moving on to other parts of Disney Gallery. Early on, Favreau talks about having respect for all parts of Star Wars, Lucas's films, anything that is canon. To some extent, he says, the EU. Filoni then emphasizes that the goal is to have everything connected. They both discuss the evolution of Boba Fett a bit, from the mystery man in the original trilogy to a shadowy warrior with different possible origins in the EU, to his concrete backstory as Jango's son in the prequel trilogy. Later on, Favreau even says a lot of the conversations that take place around Star Wars are, how do you account for what's been shown already? So this is such a point of fan discussion. What is that perspective of how much things should connect and what parts of the previous story are being taken into account? How does knowing that this is the perspective that Filoni and Favreau have, how does that inform the way we look at the actual Book of Boba Fett season?
it makes a lot of sense. I'll start there. It makes a lot of sense, and how things, whether there's simple references to the spirit of a lot of the stories, including the EU stuff. And yeah, sometimes I poke the bear of the EU, right? Where I'm just like, it's not my favorite, but I love a good reference, and I love taking ideas again and building on it there. So it just makes a lot of sense when you hear them talking about this. And it's also interesting to me, just this journey with Favreau with Star Wars, who still even here in this section kind of says, the films I grew up with. And clearly referring to the original trilogy, and his comments at the panel in 2019 in Chicago. Yeah, Dave's working on me, trying to appreciate the prequels, and I think I think this particular season reflects a lot of even John's growth as a Star Wars fan, if I may. I don't know him enough to say that for sure. Maybe it's presumptuous of me, but yeah, I think that's it definitely informs the way I look at what he and so many others did for this season.
It certainly seems like it from the outside, and I think it's one of the things that made me really invested in Book of Boba Fett right from the beginning. It's why I pumped my fist when I saw the waters of Camino, right? Mm-hmm. Because there are these different shards of Boba Fett's identity spread through all of this different storytelling, and discussions in fan groups can sometimes be, this is my Boba Fett, I reject this other part of Boba Fett, right?
Yeah.
But it's what's always fascinated me about the character, and why I've always, since the Disney purchase, been on of Lucasfilm, been on the I want to see Boba Fett, because it's this opportunity to answer the questions I've had since 2002, since we met Kid Boba Fett. He is both a badass man of mystery, and he's a traumatized orphan, and he's got a complex set of possible identities: clone, bounty hunter, maybe kind of a Mandalorian, maybe. So out of all of that, what does he want his identity to be? Mm-hmm. And I think that's what the show is wrestling with. And I think the approach to Star Wars that Filoni and Favreau are both talking about, of we want to look at everything that's ever been and say, that's all a part of the story. How does that crystallize into one story?
Yeah, and it's particularly with Boba Fett, who is a character that does cross all the mediums, right, and all the eras, more than, all the characters do. Let me be clear, but Boba Fett's legend grew in Legends, so to speak, and then even leading to Attack of the Clones when a lot of that changed. So yeah, that just again, interesting to track as they bring that all into this show. And I'm with you too. Like I think, even though I've said before in the past, like, Boba Fett, in the end, Boba Fett was never one of my favorite characters, where maybe in 83 he might have been. And I just never took to him too much after that. But I do want the answer. Give me the answers of these big questions, and I can find out more about them. And that's why I think the show, but also this particular special, did work for me, because I got to see them and their thought process in answering those questions.
Yeah. And for me, it is just kind of a pretty direct addressing of a fan concern to have these two, influential creators currently, more creators coming along, saying like, no, we talk about it a lot. How does this fit into what has come before?
Yeah.
So real respect for that.
Yeah,
moving on. There is a discussion of the casting of Temuera Morrison as Boba Fett in this show. Kathleen Kennedy reveals that George Lucas himself said, hey, if you guys ever do anything with Boba Fett, you need to bring Temuera Morrison back. Rodriguez says that Temuera Morrison is similar to Boba Fett, quoting Rodriguez, immense presence, yet a quiet softness to him, kindness and generosity that can be overwhelming. What did you appreciate about the celebration of the actor of Boba Fett in this special?
I loved it. This is someone who's got an extensive resume, but was also perhaps most known, I think you could argue, as Django, and that carries in some circles some baggage. In other circles, it carries literally no baggage. So I loved seeing him come back. I love seeing him own this role and bring so much of him to this point in Boba Fett's life. These big questions they're asking about Boba Fett, I think they're answered by Teb's spirit. I think he brought that there. And then the other thing is, can we just talk about at what point did George turn to Kathy and say, hey, making Boba Fett, I got your guy. Like what part post 2012, or maybe at the meeting in 2012? I'm fascinated by that. Love to know more about that, or be a fly on the wall.
Yeah, I mean, the dramatic version of it in my mind is that, Lucas signs the paperwork with Iger, takes that, unenthused photo, walks down the hall to Kathleen Kennedy's office, like, here's my list of 10 things that I think are important. If you're doing Boba Fett, Tamora.
And by the way, there's this thing called McClunky. You'll see. You'll find out when you get there.
I'll deliver the McClunky edition in a moment.
Yeah.
That's the new official edition of A New Hope. I think there was also that window where he was going to be, remain in more of that advisory role. And then, as he said in interviews, that he saw they wanted to go a different direction in Force Awakens, and for himself realized that this would be stressful because he has a hard time being half in. He'd want control. And so he stepped out of that advisory role. Clearly, people always talk about going to him and sharing ideas and getting his insights and all that. So even though it's not kind of official, it's still happening. So who knows when it happened, but it is really, it's one of the reasons I wanted to note it, that Kathleen Kennedy at some point, George is like, hey, if you got to use this guy is really cool.
Love that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think this whole section is really just a celebration of what this actor brings to Boba Fett. I so agree with you that his spirit is clearly there, of like absolute presence. You believe that this person is a fighter in physical presence and in emotional presence, but also there's this great still waters run deep vibe with him, right? And his performance with the Rancor in particular is like, oh, that's a guy who's gruff on the outside, but loves the dog, loves doggies. Which we'll talk about more. I loved in the special scene his dramatic reading of the screen directions about Boba Fett joining the Tusken tribe. That was a great moment, showing how clearly and explicitly the ideas were being conveyed in the screen directions. I also really like this is jumping forward, but it's one of my favorite things from Tamora Morrison when he's talking about Boba Fett's fighting style and how much he made choices that he didn't want it to be just bash, as he said, and that he was inspired by those real world roots of the gaffy stick, the Fijian weapon called a Totokia, I believe, and that he translated that into twisting motion, even when he was just doing punches and blocks. That insight was really great. I love that.
Yeah, I love that kind of stuff of just owning the physicality of the character and the full identity of the character and what he brought to it. And it's also fascinating too, because there's so much, of what we know of Boba Fett, what we don't know of Boba Fett before all of this, that you go, he was Django and he is strong and stoic. And I would say Tim's kind of a badass in his own right, if he wants to be, right. But then so much of what this series is about was truly about the other side of this performer. And what a perfect, perfect marriage in actor and role here, where I don't think, when George says that, and I heard that, I would have been like, oh yeah, I guess he is stoic and strong, but it's the softness. And watching him read that scene and getting moved by it, being like, I got to go to makeup now. Oh, it's great. It was a real powerful moment of truly you did find the right person for this role of what they wanted to do with Boba Fett. Yeah,
and just a charming, fun man, which comes across very clearly here. So then Filoni discusses the mythological theme and repeated Star Wars idea about venturing to an underworld and emerging changed. He says Boba goes through that with the Sarlacc escape. Favreau discusses the importance that Star Wars characters face physical challenges, but also internal, emotional ones as well, that it isn't Star Wars to just follow a badass having cool fights, and that the show was an effort to respect the cool, badass, best bounty hunter in the galaxy, Boba Fett, while also having the character, as Favreau says, learn the lessons of time and of experience. I think we're both on board with this show being an effort to balance those ideas, everything we're just talking about, the performance just of the character of Boba Fett, and then also everything that's being explored in the actual storytelling. But for you, do you think that balance was achieved in this show, that this was a Boba Fett who was changing and growing, but he was still the impossibly cool badass bounty hunter?
Yeah, absolutely. And what he's doing with this new power, why he wants to do it. What John said, what did he say? The idea of kind of controlling the chaos around him as he builds something new up there. That ended up working for me. I keep in conversations, even off air with friends, saying yes, absolutely enjoyed the Book of Boba Fett. I kind of even enjoyed it more than Mando 2 is literally how I phrase it. I want to leave room for the other person to have their feelings acknowledged. But I'm like, I kind of like this more than Mando Season 2 because I think this is similar to a lot of Mando Season 1. And I know it can it can border sometimes on just repeated, not just themes, but even the outfit, the Mando outfit, a grizzled warrior finding a new way. I understand maybe sometimes we want new things, and I think we are going to get new things. But for me, this particular season of Book of Boba Fett struck this chord that Favreau was talking about. Coming from a generation where Boba Fett was the mysterious badass who did badass killing things, which are part of the fun and part of the reason that the figure flew off the shelves back in the day. But to get so much more, it really did strike a balance, because even at the end of the day, even in that final episode, he's you're still not going to mess with him. You still don't want to mess with him. And he has learned everything. He has a new kind of armor, literally. Internally and externally, so it all did end up working for me, and I was I don't know, it's just reassuring to hear Favreau talk about it. I loved hearing him talk about it.
Yeah, I thought it was really important to the big picture of Star Wars and the balance of the adventure thrill and the cool fighting with the philosophy and morality of Star Wars, which was just a big question always. We talked about on our questions of the Force episode this week, but then also the specificity to Boba Fett. I think going on this journey of he can grow, he can change. He is not just a man of mystery. He's not just a cool fighter. I think that's having so much respect to what Lucas chose to do, right? To say, I think there's this energy that Lucas is like, hey, I love the action. I love the cool armor. He doesn't want to just put bad guys out there. He wants to show you maybe where they went wrong or how and can they change, right? That's the whole journey of Vader. And I think that showing him as a child out of the armor, young, vulnerable, traumatized, is this effort to say even the cool badasses are humans capable or beings, souls capable of making choices. So for this show to come along and go, yeah, we're going to respect that idea and we're going to get under the helmet and interact with the human is so great. But then on the flip side of that comes this like, yeah, but he is the best bounty hunter in the galaxy. So how are you going to respect that? And I think the big picture for me, in the big picture, yes, I do think that I understand it when people say to me, and I've had a couple of people say to me, like, I wish he was a little more badass. And I think for me, that's a function of his appearance in Mandalorian season 2 on Tython is for me, one of the greatest action scenes in all of Star Wars. It's so great. That it almost put Book of Boba Fett at a disadvantage. And I think for me, if I, for my little nitpick, I would have taken a slightly bigger action beat from Boba Fett at some point a little earlier in the series. It pays off so well when we get the finale of the knee darts and the riding the rancor and everything I've ever wanted to see. But I think narratively it was important that he certainly has big fight scenes and he certainly has big victories, but there are a lot of moments where he's back on his heels because it's necessary for the drama and the tension. But I would have taken one more big badass moment
early on, particularly. Yeah. I mean, yeah, and he look, he's got some big ones early on, killing 4-armed monsters and all that stuff. But I know what you mean, and it might have worked. That's again, I keep saying that the show is stubborn in its way, but it's a story of letting go, story of changing and not succumbing to maybe the darker aspects of the surroundings, that are around you, the people that are around you, and using who you are, but to do something better with it. There's this story of a comic moves to LA. He meets. Oh wait, that's Swingers again. Damn it! I said I wouldn't talk about it. But again, who has to let go, has to use his own power, but not the way the people around him use it. Tries to build up something better and is rewarded for it. So, anyways, I that's why I'm continuously moved by Book of Boba Fett, and to hit, and that's why. So that's why my answer is always going to be it does strike that balance. But okay, maybe he should have fought the Sarlacc and not escaped it. How about that?
Yeah. I think for me it'd just be like, and this is such a small thing. I love this show with all my heart, but I do get the Tython scene is so amazing. It's almost an obstacle, and there's a part of me that'd be like, it's amazing they accomplished everything they did in the time of the pandemic that they were doing this. But like for me, I would have taken out 12 Nightwind assassins and the next 12 get him, just to kind of amp up his skill a little bit. But that's just like this real like tune in the balance thing. It's not about the heart of the show. It's about that interesting question that they raise of how do we tell this story and still respect the badass bounty hunter?
Yeah. I understand that. Yeah.
So moving on, there is a discussion of the importance of the second episode's train sequence and its relationship to Lawrence of Arabia in the famous train scene there. Director Steph Green talks about watching that film and studying it. Storied cinematographer Dean Cundy talks about that this is what storytelling is, and particularly Star Wars storytelling. Recognizing moments that had emotional impact with audiences in other stories, and then being inspired by them, putting your own spin or interpretation on them. That is the heart of what this is. Tamora Morrison talks about how he grew up watching these kind of films like Lawrence Arabia, but as he says, now I'm Lawrence. So what did you get from hearing this take on being influenced by other stories? Because that can also be a hot button discussion among fans.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand that, and we can get to that there. I'll start here. I absolutely knew Dean Cundy was involved. We talked about it. His name is in the credits. Wasn't it a little like wonderfully weird to see him in a Star Wars BTS episode? Like that. It's Dean Cundy. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow. Doing Star Wars. Not small. Not a small thing.
No, not at all. It was great to see him. Amazing to see him.
Yeah. But I love that. And I love what Steph Green was saying too about studying this. So I agree with this overall. I joke, but it's like, I don't know. There's like really is only 7 stories in the world. That old saying. Yeah, there really is. But it is just about taking not just what worked before, but taking the basic core of the big stories that move us and inspire us and what we connect with. That is, and not just putting a fresh coat of paint, but just getting down to the level. It's also fun, I think, especially for cinephiles, or especially if you're in the business, to like, hey, that Lawrence Arabia scene, we're going to do that, but in Star Wars. I think there's some fun to that. There is the other side that we're seeing of, hey, make sure, do the trope check, do the what are you carrying on? You've discussed that wonderfully before, right, Joseph. So there's a danger to that, but I think to that's not present in this conversation, this moment where they're having. They're just going to the why of it and the spirit of it, and then even for Tem to be like, hey, guess what? I'm Lawrence of Arabia now. That was pretty powerful for me to see.
That was really powerful. And I think it was powerful that it came from Steph Green, who I thought this episode was perhaps one of the best for me, an exciting new director in the world of Star Wars, and from such a storied part of film history is Dean Cundy, to be like, this is what storytelling often is of, you take these known ingredients and they either moved you or that they moved audiences. And you take these ingredients and you don't just remake the same dish. You take an ingredient from here, an ingredient from here, and you make a new dish. And, I'd argue that's what Star Wars is. When it came out in 1977, it was like mind-blowing because no one had ever seen anything like this. And yet they could identify every little part of like, that's ancient and repeated mythology. That's Kurosawa. That's got some, synergy with Dune. That is directly from a Flash Gordon serial. Yeah. We're all still here all of these years later discussing it because it so successfully did what's being described here is take known ingredients and make a new dish.
Yeah. It seems so simple. Sometimes it feels like a cheat, right? When you hear it's not just what worked before, it's what moved us before. Find what moved us before and take that forward.
Yeah. And I'd argue that, that's what a ton of things are that aren't even the bigger genre pop culture things like Star Wars or superheroes, but like that's Scorsese is perfectly well aware of, gangster pictures that were made before.
Yeah.
And he is filtering them through his perspective, his life experience, the years that he was alive, but he's still drawing on them,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So then multiple individual characters and actors are highlighted. I'm just going to run through a quick list and then we'll dive in. They spend some time with Mayor Mock Shays. There's a discussion of creatures like this appearing on set, making it like Christmas every day. They discuss the power of seeing the Hammerhead Mayor, as Robert Rodriguez calls him, referring to the Ithorian's original action figure name, Hammerhead. Filoni talks about the history of the voice translator box that Ithorians need and how that was established for the Clone Wars, and here it is in live action. Whole big Mayor Mokshay celebration. Then we have a great clip of costume designer Shauna Trippick. I admit, I apologize. I do not know how to pronounce her last name, but she talks about having stacks of Star Wars books, even Battlefront ones, she says, for references. Talks about the sheer volume of work, 300 new costumes just for the sanctuary scenes. Actor Jennifer Beals describes her experience and describes Garsa Fwip as a mashup of Rick from Rick's Cantina in the film Casablanca with Beyonce and Lauren Bacall. And there's a discussion of Black Chrysanthemum. Filoni says there have been many not Chewbacca Wookiees in the EU and other storytelling, and the big challenge is always how do kids immediately see that that's not Chewbacca. Actor Kerry Jones talks about using his body language and his eyes to communicate that Chrysanthemum is, quote, always pissed. We learned that Kerry Jones also has a practical effects experience, and he's really impressed by the mask tech that corresponds to his own mouth and brow movements and translates those to Chrysanthemum. So a whole big section here of lots of characters, lots of ideas being celebrated. What in this section was intriguing to you?
Two big things. Well, three. Filoni kind of fanboying over his own show being represented was really fun. And I get it, right? I get it. And it's for so many years, the Clone Wars was probably this thing down the hall. At one point was the only new Star Wars thing out, of course, but just this idea of, hey, we're doing this crazy cartoon and we don't even know if it's going to connect with the larger Star Wars audience. And to have it not only do that, it just kind of be Star Wars for so many fans in that generation. And those, and so I get it. I really love that Dave just kind of like, hey, how cool is this? We did it in cartoon land and now it's in real world, which I don't want to make that sound like the two mediums are, one's better than the other, but it's just, it's pretty cool. Pretty cool for Dave and all those who worked on the Clone Wars. But I love Garsa Fwip. I've talked about that. I think Jennifer Beals is just so perfect in the role. Loved hearing what she brought to it. Loved hearing the designs that go into it. And that was pretty cool. And then, the Kerry Jones stuff was awesome. And with him and a lot of stunt performers getting roles that, stunt performers don't normally get. It happened so many times in Book of Boba Fett. Really just love that. But I love the discussion of Chrysanthemum because they didn't say Chrysanthemum. They didn't say Black Chrysanthemum from Marvel Comics. I'd love to hear that discussion. I'd love to hear, hey, John, what about this guy? And John doing his own research, which he has said he's done, particularly the Cobb Vanth stuff. He talked about, I was researching where the armor went and stumbled on these books. I love all that. But I love that they didn't talk about it in this particular episode because so many people don't know, including, my own fiance was like, cool, that's evil Chewbacca.
Right.
And that's how it works. And so for Dave to describe why it works, why it needs to work, why they don't rely on, comic guy. They don't. It works on so many levels because of this approach. So I like seeing the insight there.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like what you're saying about the Filoni fanboying over the Clone Wars idea, but I also liked what he really expressed it as this is another example of how everything is connected. Sometimes you run into similar problems of like, well, Ithorians have these great weird whale song voices, but we don't want a subtitle. And I think that was a real explicit choice in Clone Wars to make it accessible, right? Because Lucas wanted it to be for kids of all ages. So, okay, we don't necessarily want to do that. So then how do you solve that problem? And the idea of that problem coming up and Filoni going, we solved that years ago is really cool of storytelling problems and potential solutions. I always love hearing from the costume designers. I'd love to see even more in costumes. That's always an interesting story to me. I really like Jennifer Beals. It's so funny that discussion or description of Garsa Fwip as Beyonce. Because she does have this style and this control and command. But in particular, likening it to Rick's Cantina from Casablanca. Not only is Casablanca an amazing film, it really does have some pretty deep Star Wars connections from the philosophy of what's going on in the romance and in the political battle, and when do you choose to get involved, and when is it not your problem. All those kinds of ideas are there, but the idea of the obviously Rick's Cantina is an influence in many cantinas and bars in Star Wars,
Mm.
but it really resonated me with the sanctuary of, this is a place where we don't live, there's a lot of rough things going on in the galaxy, and a lot of rough things going on right here. And this is a place for everybody to take a break and be in a nice place.
Yeah.
Is one of what makes the sanctuary really great and unique.
Yeah, and driven by Garza Fwip's abilities to read everyone, to unite everyone, at least for one night at a time, and how that did show through her performances of Garza Fwip. Yeah, such a fan of the character, and so happy to have her in Star Wars, which is still kind of weird, right? It's still when Dean Cundy, Jennifer Beals, all these people popping up in Star Wars. Christopher Lloyd coming down. I love that, and it works, and loved hearing it. Yeah, and the Casablanca thing is. It tracks. It makes sense, right? You kind of go, yep. And then you kind of dig in a little deeper and it makes even more sense.
Yeah. And final thought for me, I love the Chrysanthemum section, partially because I just found Kerry Jones so charming. He was so likable and engaged and seemed like such a friendly person. And then we cut from these fun interviews with him to those absolutely devastatingly scary looks he was able to give. And like, that's acting.
It absolutely is. And such an inspired choice, because we talked about it, and everyone with a Star Wars podcast or even just in your break room at work talked about Chrysanthemum's eyes, just those looks. And yes, the tech and the mask and everything and how amazing we are where we are now. But really, that's all in that performer and telling the story through the eyes. Amazing. And the connection between, Mayhew and the sweetness of Chewbacca that comes through Mayhew's eyes. And Kerry Jones doesn't look like he's going to rip your arms off, but maybe he could. But he was able to tap into something different, and it was why it was so effective.
Yeah, it was really, really great. With that, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back to discuss a lot more big ideas and interesting moments in Disney Gallery Book of Boba Fett. And we're back to continue our discussion about Disney Gallery Book of Boba Fett, the behind-the-scenes story of the season of television known as Book of Boba Fett. Well, we're going to talk about that. What kind of season is it? But first, we're going to the Rancor. There was a lot of great Rancor talk. In particular, Favreau says the most memorable part of Patissa in Return of the Jedi was Malakili crying. Significantly, he does not use those names.
You're right.
He says the Rancor Keeper. He's not spilling out Malakili trivia like Filoni probably would.
Did you? I was going to say, did you imagine Filoni behind him on set going, Malakili was the they think it's Patissa, maybe Patissa Mucci might be. Okay, I'll go sit down.
I really did. I was kind of hoping for, Favreau was talking, as we're going to discuss, so wonderfully and intelligently about the Rancor Keeper that I kept wanting him to go, and he's got a name. It's Mika Malala. I don't know.
I don't know.
I know the heart of the idea. That's the important thing. Yeah. So he talks about how much the Rancor Keeper, Malakili crying, was really impactful in Return of the Jedi and fascinating. Danny Trejo, there's a great interview where he describes the Rancor as a big doggy, and says, just like dogs, you can train them to be vicious or a protector or a puppy. It is about the training often. Doug Chang talks about how they were inspired in how to realize the Rancor in Book of Boba Fett, that they were inspired by the practical Rancor hand that grabs Luke in Return of the Jedi and said, let's go all out. Doug Chang enthused about, if Boba's going to ride a Rancor, we need a big, real Rancor head. So fascinating stuff. But what came out of it for me, Ken, is that clearly a ton of the Rancor being used at all in Book of Boba Fett is inspired by the past of what the Rancor was like, story-wise and physically in Return of the Jedi. How do you think this Rancor was new, even though it was interpreted or inspired, rather, by the past?
I think what's new is what they really took time to bring to the story. This has been one of our most discussed scenes here on ForceCenter. It's one that has absolutely moved me. The stuff of Trejo and what he's saying and the change and Boba petting him like a dog. It's literally one of my favorite scenes in the last 5-6 years of Star Wars, hands down. And so I think this new Rancor brought all that. It brought the bigger themes to it that are there. And it's very interesting. It's not just a funny joke. It's a funny moment growing up, especially our generation, who for years, like I remember the Rancor keeper, he cried. But that did leave an imprint on all of us. It was one of the first times it made not that Luke was wrong or you saw the other side of the Jedi, not that deeper stuff, but it was a wrinkle in the discussion, right? To me, Rancor, evil, scared me as a kid, monster. But here's someone crying over it. What does that mean? And so for them to take all that and build on that, that's what was new to me. Just the exploration of the big themes and the connections and what you are and what what you can be is all big. We've talked about it so many times, but that's what I took out of it. And how it isn't just simply, hey, there was a Rancor. We need a Rancor. That's where it starts, but then you build it, and it becomes more than the Rancor just having a cameo. It becomes it comes with great purpose.
Yeah, no, it's what I really loved hearing. I really loved Favreau zeroing in on this. Like, and it really sounded like he's had the original trilogy era playground in bar discussions, because he even gives that caveat of like, Luke was fighting for his life. It's not Luke's fault.
Yeah.
I'm not going to blame him, but I've always had that relationship, that you and I have talked about of like, even as a kid, I perceived like, I'm sure people in the theater laughed when I saw it. And it's like, I get that that's supposed to be a joke, but ouch. I loved my poodle Dusty that we had when I was growing up at that age, is before we had our Chihuahua Nico. I loved Dusty so much, and I think around that time I had got in trouble at school because we've been asked to write down our family members, and I included Dusty the poodle, and the teacher thought I was making a joke, and I got yelled at. And like, no, the dog's part of the family. Yeah. So coming at it from that perspective, I felt all the things that everybody is talking about of like, okay, but that makes the Rancor entirely different. It's not a scary monster.
Yeah,
it's a friend. It's a part of the family. What does that mean? So all these years later, to have them do what I think this is the value of that tip of the iceberg storytelling, where, the movies, will throw out like this door. It will establish this door and it will crack open just a little bit and you get to look inside. And that's so much been the journey of The Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, to say like, well, if that's true, let's look at it as fully as we can. And that's what the journey with the Rancor. If it's true from this one weird beat that the Rancor has feelings, is sentient, can be loved, can make choices, how can we explore that in more depth?
Yeah, absolutely love what you're saying there, and use it to great effect. And then even as you're talking, I'm wondering like, who do I blame back in the Jabba days? I don't, because I don't even know if it's Malakili. He just might have been doing his job, and we do learn a little bit more about Malakili thanks to Wendig and the Aftermath series. And I think he might have a heart of gold. He's an animal guy. He's got it. And then maybe it came down from Jabba.
Oh yeah, that's the me. Is it's like this is expected, like that the person who's controlling this part of town or part of the galaxy has a menagerie. Like that's like it's like Maul probably has a menagerie. It's expected, of gangsters, and then it puts Patissa in this light of somebody who is suffering under Jabba as well. Yeah. And the whole sequence too, bringing in the Doug Chang part of it, is just, there's a little bit more of again that indie spirit, big budget, and it sometimes might be a little easier to say, well, what if we do this? Let's go all out. But you still got to do it. You still got to try it, and you still got to make it happen. Yeah, and that's the other thing I was moved by, or I guess not moved by, is like, if it was a conversation in person, I want to be like, okay, was that a battle? Did you take a budget from something else? Did you have to go to Kathleen Kennedy's head with a PowerPoint presentation on, or Kathleen Kennedy's office with a PowerPoint expression, say, this is why we need a full Rancor head. Was it a battle to get that money, or is it like, no, it's fine. Yeah. And I love going back to, them referring to some of the stuff with Phil Tippett and everything back in the day, that kind of behind the scenes lore, just such a part of Star Wars, but they have that to draw upon. And so then again, the same spirit too of, remember, they tried it a few times, and how do we get this work? Maybe Phil Tippett in a costume, maybe this. So same spirit and same connection. Love that. Yeah, absolutely. So moving on, we could talk about Rancor all day, but in discussing Din Djarin's role in the Book of Boba Fett, both Filoni and Favreau discuss Boba Fett, or rather the Book of Boba Fett, as another season. Filoni says, "We both like Mando, and we felt that it would be difficult for us to go a whole season without seeing him." Favreau talks about the Night of 1,000 Tears and having that backstory finally come out 3 seasons into our storytelling. So this has been something that, of course, fans have had lots of different opinions on. Totally understandable. I think even casual viewers being confused that this is Book of Boba Fett, and then there are 2 episodes where he's not in it or barely in it, and we're really focusing on the story of Din Djarin and Grogu. At one point, they had thrown out that this was kind of Mandalorian season 2.5. But this is confirmation that the creators, at least confirmation to me, that the creators approach this as sort of season 3 of the Mandoverse, of this overall story of armored people making different choices. So hearing that, where do you sit with that debate? Hearing this perspective of them kind of casually referring to it as another season or the 3rd season.
Where do I sit with that debate? I do this because I just had this past weekend at a competitive trivia show taping. Someone took a shot at Boba Fett not appearing enough in his own show, and I went like this: "I got nothing for you, man." I get it. I get it. I really do. It was different. Again, I use that word stubborn a lot to describe the show because it just was like, here's what we're going to do. But to hear it, what again, they didn't come out and say, all right, so we view this as a Mandoverse. It's just it's in the words. It's in the wordings of yeah. So this a whole, we couldn't go a whole season. It's just the continued story, and the debates and the silly debates on, well, here's what a book is, and here's what a book could be, and here's what the show. Just sit back and enjoy Star Wars storytelling in this one era. Only thing, that is the only thing I got for you. So yes, I'm with you. I think it was kind of confirmed from a certain point of view, maybe. Does not mean I don't understand. Well, that was a curveball. I totally get it, but I think it will make more sense in time. Number one, and two, what a joy that you get to experience this.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think I liked hearing that. I perceived with, I think just from some of the verb tense, that these interviews were done during production.
Correct. Yeah. I think
so I think it was revealing about this is how we are approaching it, because I think there are some lines of like, this is what we're trying to do. We hope that comes across.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like looking back. So for me, it was great insight that they approached it, whatever terminology they used, that they approached the Book of Boba Fett as a part of the whole story. We're going to talk a little later about how Favreau was even really drawing specific connections between the journeys of Boba Fett and Din, that this is a story of armored hunters choosing new paths, and how does that work, and how are they the same and how are they different. That to them, it was clearly a part of this whole overall story. With that, is always really understand, really acknowledge anybody who is confused or annoyed. My wife really enjoyed it all, but was like, yeah, no, I was really in that Boba Fett mood. And then I enjoyed everything I saw, but it took me a while to get into it because I was like, I wanted to be with Boba Fett and Fennec. So I really get it. Totally understand. But I think it ultimately works for me because all of these thematic ideas are going on, and also that intertwine, and also because the stuff with Din Djarin and Grogu is real interesting. Helps for me, so I think that's part of it, is like, totally get that this is maybe a weird curveball. Maybe they even should have tried to communicate it to fans better at the beginning. All valid opinions and valid discussions, but at the end of the day, particularly if you're a really invested Star Wars fan, you just want to accept that this is the way it is and try to enjoy what's there.
What's the trade-off? So let's say you're all right about that, right? They did this wrong. Okay, so then you want to subtract those 2 wonderful episodes. Do you put them in another season? All right, maybe that's the discussion. Maybe that's fair. And yeah, your wife Sarah is not alone in that. And I've had many discussions with folks of just like, hey, I want more Boba Fett and Fennec, which is a testament to Boba Fett and Fennec. So yeah, maybe an 8th episode, but I also don't think we're done with them in that story. And what I love, that the thing in here of them talking about, so in season 2 of Mando, we bring Boba Fett back. We like what's going on. Even Robert Rodriguez talking about, they came to me. We're like, hey, you're doing pretty good. You want to keep doing this? one executive produced another story, a larger story of this, and that John kind of intimates that they saw that, thought about it, ruminated a little bit, and did go to Kathleen Kennedy's office to speak with her and get into her head, as you said earlier, and say, hey, we had this thought. Why don't we follow this for a bit? Why don't we follow this and see where this takes us and see how it all connects to a larger story? That's the biggest takeaway I got from that.
Yeah. Really powerful stuff. My final thought on this is I'm very interested with both, Book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian panels going on at Celebration, if there'll be any acknowledgement of some of the fan confusion or frustration about those episodes.
Yeah. Fine. And maybe announced during a commercial says part of the Mandoverse. All right, there you go.
There you go. Moving on. Doug Chiang takes us on a very emotional N1 journey. Talks about designing it for the Phantom Menace with George Lucas as the F1 version of an X-Wing. He discusses how he got the opportunity during the production of the Phantom Menace to sit in the original model of the ship that he designed, and then 23 years later, sitting in this new hot rod version. Favreau talks about the connection to American graffiti and the tradition of hot rodding classic cars, and how that's baked into Star Wars, and it was something that they really wanted to explore. So for you, we've talked a lot about what the N1 means and about the history of hot rodding and about the history of racing and generational change, even in Book of Boba Fett. How does seeing the real human side, the Doug Chiang side of the N1's journey impact you or impact your appreciation for the story? I
just can't stop smiling when you see Doug Chiang smiling. Just really can't, because it is a bit of a victory of the prequels, as we discussed when we just broke down that episode of. He designs this beautiful design. It never wasn't a beautiful design. It was a beautiful design from the start, but it's a movie that has a lot of baggage attached to it for a long time. And still does. Still does. I still have the discussions of wait, time out. You like the Phantom Menace? This was at my own birthday party. Like, come on.
I had one of those discussions just the other day about, like, I know you like them, but come on. The discussion is still there.
And you're like, sir, this is an Arby's. Just give me my sandwich. I want to go. But to see him just in the cockpit, to see the design, see it fully realized, and then see it matter in the story, and what they're pulling from the history of just George's own life as a car guy, as someone who nearly lost his life in a car race. It's so, I don't know. There's just so much I love about it. It just brings joy, and again, done with great purpose. And that's all I really want out of all of this stuff. And sometimes there's little things along the way, Max Rebo playing, is one of my favorite things. Was there great purpose to it? We'll find out. But it was just fun. That one I put on a shelf as a fun little thing to drawn from the figures that I loved as a kid, and that character's there. But the N1 is not a throwaway. It's done with great purpose, great storytelling effect, and that made me love it even more.
Yeah. Well, when the Disney Plus show Max Rebo Can't Die comes out, I think everything that was layered in about him not being at the sanctuary.
At Star Wars Celebration, look for me in my Hit It Max t-shirt designed by the great Brian Ward. That's what I'll be wearing every day, I think. So I love it. But you know what I mean? Where it's just like, it didn't have a great purpose. It had a purpose. Whereas the N1, it wasn't like, let's just grab some random ship that people like. And then Bryce Dallas Howard just directs the hell out of that episode.
Yeah, no, I mean, what it means to Din, the idea that he can be something new, that he can embrace a sense of freedom in a sense of fun. All of that is baked in. It isn't just the like, hey, Star Wars has a tradition of hot rods, so let's throw that in, and it's aesthetically cool. It was so tied to Din's journey, and that journey so tied to Boba Fett's journey of change that it absolutely had such resonance. And I think for me, I was already ready to be emotional about it. But what really struck me is, going, being a young man during the Phantom Menace backlash in particular. I don't remember anyone ever being mean toward Doug Chiang, but I certainly remember conversations about some friends I had who were like, the N1 was cool and that was it. That was the only thing they liked. And I had some friends who were even like, the N1 is cool, but it's not Star Wars. What's this shiny, sleek ship about? It should be, I heard negativity about the N1. I heard negativity about the designs. Again, nobody ever being cruel to Doug Chiang as a person, but definitely he's no Ralph McQuarrie vibe. He was the new guy, who wasn't doing Star Wars right.
Yeah.
And to go all these years and then to see this human, this artist as the venerable, accomplished, only middle-aged as a human, but elder statesperson of Star Wars design, spoken with reverence because he's the storied person who's been there forever. That's just a beautiful thing to live through, and to see him physically experience it. I got to be in the original version. They love my designs. They wanted to come back in this different way, and I get to sit in it, and they take me on a ride in the volume.
Yeah.
Zipping
Everyone
me around.
Everyone claps.
Yeah, it was so great to live through that arc of like, well, this isn't right, to this is beloved,
Yeah.
And here's a celebration of this human who is responsible for that design. Yeah. Very powerful stuff. We're going to move on to some more powerful stuff, and that is the entire Luke process. We see that Mark Hamill was in the Luke costume, acting out all of the scenes with Grogu, with Rosario Dawson. We see Mark Hamill talk about his understanding of the scenes of Luke having to suppress his sentimental side so he can really imbue Grogu with the skills that Grogu needs. And then we learned that with infrared dots, Graham Hamilton also performed the Luke Skywalker scenes. And then tech wizard Richard Bluff talks about how they did use deepfake tech as reference in Luke's appearance during season 2 of Mandalorian, but they couldn't get the resolution required. So of all the tech involved, deepfake wasn't a part of that. But then for the Book of Boba Fett, there was an even larger collaboration between many artists, John Knoll, Landis Fields, Peter Demarest, and a YouTuber known as Shamook, a real name, Sam Head, who Lucasfilm hired after he posted a deepfake version of Luke in season 2 of The Mandalorian. It was a lot. It was dizzying. What was intriguing to you about all the behind the scenes details, from the acting, the storytelling, to the technology?
I'll start with the tech thing, because number one, it's the thing I understand the least, right? That's why I'm not, in any edit bay making magic happen. I was fascinated by that particular section. Go with me here. Richard Bluff, Hal Hickel, a lot of the people we've gotten to know through these Mando galleries and whatnot. I remember there being a little bit of pushback. I don't necessarily know from Richard Bluff, and I don't want to accuse Hal of it too, but there was a little bit of pushback to some of the deepfake stuff being tweeted at them, right?
Mm-hmm.
I kind of remember that. And so there was a little bit of, Richard, we need you to stand here and tell us all how we got from that to this. And it was a little, I'm not saying it was like a prepared statement and he drew the short straw and had to do it. There had a little bit of a vibe of like, look, we understand. Here's why the first one maybe didn't look as good as you all wanted it to be. And maybe we knew it wasn't as good as we could make it at that time, but technology grows and changes, and we are part of that. And we did reach out to someone who does do amazing work. And I liked it. I think there's a great spirit behind it, but it was the only, I don't even say awkward, but you know what I mean? Like it read different than any other part of the doc.
There was definitely I think maybe I approached it the same way as you, because there can be this controversy of hiring a YouTuber. You know, that is a thing to be aware of and to have opinions about. I think of, hey, great, if there is somebody who has a great command of a specific technological skill, hey, why not bring him in? That's great. This version of Luke, this much longer appearance, different approach, did look great to me. Did look better than season 2 of Mandalorian. So there's that part that's great. There's that other part, I think, of like, what have we opened Pandora's box? And is everybody, from doing deep fakes to little films of their action figures going to be tweeting that Lucasfilm should hire me? And that there's almost I am going to tell you clearly and calmly exactly the entire process, so everything is above board and everybody knows everything. It felt a little like a great professional delivering a press release so everybody knows what's what.
Yes. I actually really agree with that statement of yes, we are acknowledging that because they even showed the tweet, right? They showed the tweet, acknowledged it, and here's why. And because you talk about arguments, he almost got in over the weekend. I almost got in a Facebook. Like when I say almost, like I stopped. They didn't say anything to me. They just posted on their own Facebook page. So it would have been me going onto their lawn and causing a problem. They showed the reimagined Vader Kenobi New Hope fight. They were like, this is the better than anything Disney era. This is the only retcon. He used this phrase. This is the only retcon I'm on board for in these last 5 years or so. And I was like, on my keyboard, ready to type. I was like, that would be wrong of me. That'd be wrong of me. So there is, and I get you clearly get grumpy about it, where someone's like, hey, look at this fan film did it way better. Okay. But there doesn't mean there isn't talent and passion involved in those projects, the fanfic stuff for the fan films, or even just a person going, hey, here's what I can do with my own tech and my own skills. And I think it was smart for Lucasfilm and everyone involved to go, hey, we are continuing to work with this and grow with it and push the boundaries as morally challenging those boundaries might seem to some folks, which I get that discussion. Anyways, I all that to say, it was a weird moment for me, and I love talking about it with you because that press release thing kind of makes sense to me.
Yeah, and I think I don't understand all of it, but on a technical level, but I understand I think he communicated clearly that, hey, we are trying to do the spirit of Star Wars, the spirit of George Lucas, use groundbreaking technology to try to do something that hasn't been done fully before, so you can tell a story a certain way. And anytime you're doing something groundbreaking, it's going to grow. And the older one is going to look different, and that's the process we're engaged in now. And the overall spirit of, we want this to be amazing, so the storytelling is amazing, and we're going to keep evolving and keep learning and keep embracing new ideas. That came across.
That absolutely came across, because if they crossed their arm and got stubborn about it, like I probably would have if I was in the job, it would have not looked as good. And I do think it just so much better, number one, but I think it looked really good. Even watching the scenes here in the special, it just reminded me of it really did work for me personally.
Yeah, totally agreed. Let's talk a little bit more then about the storytelling side of it, the acting side of it, the revelation that Mark Hamill was involved. Not a revelation, he's credited, but getting to really see. In what way? Was he standing off to the side, or this, I guess, revelation that he's in the costume, acting the whole thing? How'd you feel about that?
I loved it. I mean, you could even say he co-directed those scenes just on the clips they show. He's really there when Graham's on set of just like, hey, here's what I would do, and here's how to play it. And it's not just that Graham's, as an actor, this Graham Hamilton isn't just copying that. He's going, okay, cool, let me take that and put that into my performance of it. It was wonderful. Shows the love and passion and ownership Mark Hamill has over Luke in a good way. I mean that in a good way. He talks often about, hey, they rent me for the role every now and then. I let it go after that. That was a lot of the Last Jedi conversation, but he brings his all. It is a big part of his legacy, clearly, and it just works and it's effective. And I've seen some folks complain that, well, why was he even on set if you're just going to erase him? That's how you put it all together. And it's no different than Ian McDiarmid being off camera while Padme, when Natalie Portman's reading the Padme lines, or Adam Driver showing up for all the Force connection scenes with Daisy Ridley and vice versa. I think it's the same thing when you build in these scenes. You need to get the spirit, you need to get it right. And this showed that they did, to me, get it right, whether or not you agree with what they did with the voice afterwards, and which it confuses me at best, weirds me out maybe at worst. But it just showed that it was, again, put together with great care.
Yeah. And I think for me is from my own experiences, writing, acting, directing, putting something like this together, it is huge to take the words on the page and then have Mark Hamill be the one who says, I'm going to walk through the scene. I'm going to break it all down. I'm going to make the choices. And even the little clips of dialogue we hear, they're very much about making choices, about like, when does he pause because he's affected by what he perceives Grogu is feeling? Mm-hmm. What does he think Grogu is feeling? At what beat is Luke perceiving that? How does Luke react to that? those are the choices he's making. He's not just walking through and saying some lines. He is, along with the writers and the directors, defining the scene and therefore defining the character. It's big.
Yeah, huge. I absolutely think it's huge. He was involved more than I even thought. Just the fact that he was there, and I mean, I knew he was there, but I mean, just listening to what they captured with him on set, talking about it all, more than I expected.
Yeah, and then the other thing for me, extremely impressive that at Mark Hamill's age he can sit in that folded leg Jedi pose, no problem.
Okay, but that was that like. Was that like a Marty Short when he was in Arrested Development, type of fake leg prop thing? It really freaked me out.
No, just really, I want to know. I want Mark Hamill to make an exercise video of like a joint health in humans as they age. Please, that was like one of the most impressive parts.
I know, absolutely. As someone with who is continuing to his workout journey and has a lower back issue that I can't even bend over, pick up a pen if I drop it. Like, how did he do that? God bless him. Great.
Very, very impressive. A lot of great stuff there, and just fun to see. Obviously, as well, the Rosario Dawson's reaction that she's working with Mark Hamill, not Plo Koon. Great stuff.
Okay, can I ask you this question though?
Yeah.
How many more times can Dave Filoni get away with a Plo Koon surprise?
That was my reaction too, of like, totally understandable. Busy actor, different time frame. She probably didn't sit down and read, Art of Mandalorian season 2 book, before this. And I love that she is aware enough to be like, okay, how's that work timeline wise? Okay, I don't know. I know who Plo Koon is. I know when he died. I'll find out when I get there, and then spring that surprise. Yeah, but at this point, it's like, yeah, I mean, Filoni is going to be, the director who cried Plo Koon, not the boy who cried wolf, but the director who cried Plo Koon. Like, come on.
Yeah, I love it. Because he's fiendish. He giggles. He's like, yeah, I did it again. I did it again.
I pulled another Plo Koon, if you know what I mean. Yeah, great stuff. And just her joy.
Yeah,
that was fun.
Yeah.
So speaking of Dave Filoni, there is a section here where Filoni focuses on the fathers. Filoni says that Qui-Gon Jinn's methodology would have funneled through Obi-Wan to Luke. So Luke is perhaps more of the methodology of Qui-Gon Jinn. He also talks about the general importance of this line of training, that Qui-Gon's methodology might have flown from Obi-Wan to Anakin, and from Anakin to Ahsoka as well. So what do you think this importance of the chain of training is, and what do you think the Qui-Gon methodology is? I'm sure Filoni has many thoughts on what that is, but in this particular, maybe that was edited out. We don't get into what that methodology is, just that connection is there. I'm
sure in 2005 at local Burbank bars, he had many conversations about Qui-Gon's methodology, and everyone said, please, shut up, Dave. Shut up, Dave. I love that. I actually love that. I love that stuff. And this is where Dave really does connect with me as a fan. I love hearing him talk about this stuff. And I think Qui-Gon's methodology, just everything about him, to me, it connects with Luke with, exploring the margins of the Force, exploring the margins of the Jedi Order, digging in and finding out what's really there, and not just moving beyond the rules, but finding the true spirit of what they're supposed to be doing and what they're supposed to be about and what they're supposed to accomplish. And that allows Luke to do what Dave says here of, I'm presenting some choices, not necessarily leaning any way with you here. I'm just saying, here's some choices, and I know what this might mean to you, and I have this experience. And that's a bit of free thinking inside the structure of the Jedi that I think Qui-Gon has, that Obi-Wan at times butted up against. This we know, and where does he come around with some of that? Often, sometimes what you're taught and fight against early on, maybe later on you find it is part of you and you don't even know that. I don't know. So some of that stuff, and that makes sense for Obi-Wan to pass it on. So anyways, that's just kind of my general thoughts of how it can connect to Luke, particularly Luke in this episode, in this moment.
Yeah, and I like the idea that Obi-Wan, in his older age and his older experiences, understands a little bit more where Qui-Gon is coming from and might have passed that on to Luke a bit more. I think I was excited to hear this discussion because obviously this is the kind of thing, like you said, Filoni is a fan, and he probably would have had a ton of great, insightful things to say about Qui-Gon's methodology in 1999. But as of right now, when this interview is taking place, it's very intriguing to me of where is his head at as he moves into Ahsoka storytelling, and
absolutely,
the importance of lineage and the line of training, and what do you learn from your master? What do you evolve past your mentors on? And all that kind of great ideas. And to me, it ultimately related to Luke and what happens with Grogu, which we'll talk about. But it also just made me think of, he's really thinking about what makes Ahsoka who she is. In terms of what the Qui-Gon methodology is, I really agree with you. I think the short version of it to me is a focus on what is the spirit of the rules? What is the intent of the rules? What is the outcome that is desired based on those rules, not the letter of the rules. And anytime that you talk about breaking the rules, and I think it's probably a pretty universal human thing, but it's definitely an American thing where we largely defy ourselves. Not largely. It is one of the things where we defy ourselves is we go our own way. We break the rules, you know. If you want us to go this speed limit, you got to post it a little bit lower because we're going to break it. You know, that is an American thing, which I speak from my experience as an American. Again, I'm sure it's universal as well. But I think that can sometimes lead us to, if you say, well, Qui-Gon breaks the rules or bends the rules, like, yeah, well, he goes his own way and he doesn't even care. And I think to me, it's the exact opposite, right? It's that this methodology that I am absolutely pursuing the rules. I am absolutely using the dogma of the Jedi as a guide to what is right. That's why we came up with these ideas, because they help us push toward the light. And at the same time, I have this definition of what I believe is right. It's compassion. It's helping people. It's not causing harm through your actions. It is about pursuing the light and what is right for the sake of it, not to win any game or be better than anyone, but just to do what you feel is right. So any defying of the rules is not to go gray, you know, and use the dark side a little bit, or you know, thumb your nose at the establishment. It's that if you butt up against rules or dogma that are failing to meet their own goals in preventing you from helping people, preventing you from reaching the light, then you'll go, okay, well, the rules are meant to be helpful, but they're not right now. So I'm going to continue to pursue the spirit of them.
No, well said. I think it ties to a little bit of what Favre was saying earlier of if you just have a badass to be a badass, you only have half the story. If you just have someone who's breaking the rules, he's a rebel and the Jedi know it. If he's just that, it's nothing. It's why. The why of it. It's so big to Star Wars, right? And yeah, oh God, don't get me started. There was that article going around on gray and Jedi. Star Wars needs more gray characters. Nope, not Star Wars, not for me. And it is the great purpose about that. And this, you know, the Ahsoka of it all. You mentioned Ahsoka's Dave and his mindset on Ahsoka going into that series, which on the time of this recording began official production today, according to Twitter. Exciting things there. I think it's the great purpose. And you're right. I think maybe I stopped at one point saying, I think it's easy to interpret Qui-Gon as a rule breaker. He's not. He's maybe a rule interpreter. He's someone who finds the whole spirit behind it.
Yeah, rule adjuster. Yeah, and I think it so relates to Ahsoka because, again, as you and I have talked about, our opinion, our interpretation, we'll see what happens with the storytelling, is that Ahsoka isn't denying the Jedi. She's trying to bring them back to their roots in the true purpose of their rules and their existence.
Yeah, exactly.
So Filoni also has some great things to say about Luke, which you were alluding to. This is really great. Filoni discusses how he wanted the audience to feel it would be good for Grogu to be with Luke, that he would get a lot out of that, while also having this understandable emotional pull of wanting Grogu to be with Din Djarin. Filoni says, I don't think Luke is presenting an argument either way, referring to Luke offering him the choice between the Beskar and the lightsaber and going back to Din versus following the path of the Jedi. Filoni also says Luke deeply understands what it's like to want to be with your father figure, which makes him, quote, a really, really good mentor for Grogu. So how does this, hearing Filoni talk about this moment, impact your opinion of Luke's big choice?
I think it just reaffirms that Luke handled it in the right way, and that we don't get to see that conversation, right? We just get a great cliffhanger of a television show. But I think that Luke would understand either way, and also know that you need to choose either to be here or not to be here, and he gets both sides. It just simply put for me, just like Luke just really did understand the situation he was in. I agree with Dave on that one there. But it's interesting. He says he's a really, really good mentor for Grogu. So to me, I'm like, well, he's given up that role here. So he only had that short amount of time.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's also this idea like, yeah, no, maybe Luke imparted a lot in a short amount of time, which we're going to talk about it as well. But also that idea that the door is open. If Grogu comes back and is like, I've had 5 years of wonderful life with my father, Din, and now I'm ready. I understand I wasn't ready, and I am now. And Luke would be great. Yeah. Welcome back, Grogu,
Absolutely.
Yeah, because this is hearing Filoni talk about it really supports how much I like this moment. I understand it's a great way to debate and discuss philosophy about attachment and how do you balance, sacrifice for service to others versus what you need as a person. How much can you have in your life? All those great discussions that people are having. But I always really liked it that Luke is offering Grogu a choice. He's seeing that there's conflict, and instead of making a choice for him, instead of pressuring him and saying, stop thinking about your dad, focus, you have a responsibility, instead of riding him, like, frankly, sometimes Obi-Wan did to Anakin, he gives him a choice and says, maybe this isn't for you right now, kid. Maybe you'd rather be with your dad. And I really like Filoni focusing on the fact that one of the many ways that Luke understands Grogu is that he went on this whole journey of, I want to be a Jedi like my father, who I think is dead. Turns out my dad didn't exist or does exist. And I didn't get to be with them. His desire to save him, in Return of the Jedi being expressed as get you off the ship so we can spend time together, get you off the Death Star so we can spend time together. And Anakin responding as, you already have saved me, but still having Luke being like, look, what are father figures to me? Uncle Ben is a smoldering skeleton. Obi-Wan died almost immediately. As soon as I reconnected with my real father, he was no longer there. So he's really going to understand missing your dad figure.
And it's important to know, it's just, and we talked about it a lot, but it's not the end of the journey. And I think you're right. At the end of Grogu's time, maybe he reconnects. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he goes off to some other world, some other land. But I think that's part of it too.
Yeah, I think that father figure thing is so great. And I also continue to think that like Luke also really relates to this because of the journey we saw him go on in the original trilogy. He knows what it's like to not be fully focused on your Jedi training. And he knows the danger of giving in to frustration and fear and anger because he experienced those things viscerally and, relatively recently in the timeline. So I really continue to appreciate that stuff. Moving on, we get a little bit of discussion of Grogu versus the Rancor. Favreau talks about the thrill of putting the stop-motion-esque monster that is the Rancor in a kaiju rampage setting in Tatooine, and then ultimately being calmed by Grogu. Rodriguez says he wanted to show an evolution of Grogu's force use and powers, and he did that by having Grogu not close his eyes while using the Force as Grogu has before, but instead only closing them at the end after Grogu has successfully sent a wave of calm, love, empathy, as Rodriguez says to the Rancor. Filoni discusses that this is what Grogu has learned from Luke, that being a Jedi is not just about power or being an expert swords person, but the ability to connect, to reach out, to help abate rage and fear. I think that you and I are both in line with this because we've talked about this moment of Grogu, of this being true story evolution and seeing that even though Grogu left Luke, that he found some of that balance that Luke was telling him is out there, so that he is enhanced by his time with Luke. How does all this discussion of this moment enhance your enjoyment or understanding of it?
That Grogu in that moment is pure as of a Jedi as any Jedi that's come before and will come after, right? And others will hit these marks as well. I think Rey does time and time again too. But yeah, again, the purpose and how we even just talk about the concept of balance being dark and light, and there are those who would push the dark up and over the light, and that Jedi maybe are there to stand in the middle of it. And that is not just about red sabers and fights; it's about day to day and the little things. And I think that just drove home this point even more for me of Grogu, eyes open. What I take from that is eyes open, more connected, more eyes are the window of the soul for you and for me, and for him and the Rancor to connect there. It's interesting. I hadn't really thought too much about it I'm just talking about over the course of the entire Star Wars saga of who closes their eyes at what point when they use the Force or not, because there's examples of both. And who knows, Vader may be closing his eyes the entire time while he's Force choking Marty. We don't know. So it made it a true moment of peace in action.
Yeah, I think what I really liked about it, I hadn't noticed the eyes. I noticed how much Grogu really strides out there, as much as a puppet can stride. Yeah. He was striding, and that it is so intentional. He knows the situation, and he is making a choice to use the Force in this very specific way. And a couple things I like about that is throughout the history of Star Wars, we've seen the difference between kind of Force powers being used instinctually, even in books, Leia using them without realizing it, versus reaching this point where you are very consciously using your powers. Yeah. And I like that this is such a conscious moment from Grogu. A lot of the moments we've seen are instinctual or aggressive, their defense, or flinging the flames back at the flame trooper, all those kind of things. That this moment is not only consciously using the Force, but understanding the Force in a different way. Yeah. That understanding it's not just a physical thing, that it's a spiritual, emotional thing, and just reaching out and radiating out what Grogu understands the Rancor needs to feel. Yeah. It's a really beautiful moment, followed by a funny and heartwarming moment of the group nap between Grogu and Rancor. Yeah. But it's one of the things that makes me feel really good about the story structure, because Grogu goes on a journey. He's not just in this season because every merchandiser yelled at Disney and said, "You got to get the Baby Yoda in this one." Mm-hmm. He's got a story to tell, in this moment between Grogu and the Rancor makes the story feel whole. It is such a vital part of this story of breaking the cycle of violence.
Yeah, and building up something new, building up new community, and building up, just building up this idea of how you use your power, something that's been discussed a lot this week here at ForceCenter, and then that leads to the cutest nap in the history of cinema. So.
Yep. The galaxy's greatest naps coming soon. Star Wars Ranked. We'll see if we can come up with enough naps. So Favreau wraps up by talking about the definition of a hero, and he describes it as putting your own individual needs aside and making them subservient to something bigger than yourself. He describes how for Din Djarin, it's taking care of Grogu and building that bond. And for Boba Fett, it's gaining a family with the Tuskens, discovering what that's like, and then after tragically losing it, actively choosing to build this new community. How do you feel about this definition of a hero and how it ties together all the threads of these stories?
Yeah, it's a big Star Wars idea. Do what is good for others, not what makes you feel good. And you hear George talking about, I went through some dark times, got divorced. My franchise is coming to a close, and I learned during that time that you find true happiness by what you give to others and how you help others, and that's part of the spirit that was in Star Wars, and it only became a bigger part of it, I think, even after that. And this connects to that, this idea of your own desires being set aside, and I love how you even highlight Boba Fett and the community, the building of the community, and how him walking, the final episode of him just kind of walking around. It always struck me as like a fun sitcom-y moment of we're just walking around. Hey, that's my new buddy. Hey, look at that. We're rebuilding everything. It's all good. It actually works for me when you're looking at what Boba Fett was trying to do. and how we got to that point, and we're looking at that point and building back to it in my mind, and they're at that moment. Boba Fett is a bit of a true hero.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what really drives home that last episode, and many big ideas, but just this big idea of Boba Fett has this feeling that if you reach out with respect, maybe you can build something, maybe you can work together. And so many people around him have doubt and cynicism, or outright anger, like, no, you can't. And this is the story of, it holds. The alliance holds. People are there for one another. And I think for me, it gets into this idea of heroism, that when you build something bigger than yourself, the community benefits, and hey, you benefit because you're part of that community, right? Favreau really states it as a putting aside your own individual needs and making them subservient. And I think that's often a way we define heroes. And I think that is good. But my own personal philosophy is, you need to be fulfilled as a person in order to build bonds with others and build bonds as a community. And I think for me, the story is that in the example of these characters, Din Djarin and Boba Fett, they build things, they sacrifice, and they make connection. And not only do they make the community better, not only do they help the people around them, but they actively help themselves and make their own lives better by that pursuit.
Yeah, it's I think knowing yourself is the best way to then give yourself to others, and that's always an ongoing process, and you're never going to stop learning. At least you hope, and so that's kind of the big connective thread in all of it, without a doubt.
Yeah, powerful, great stuff. So to wrap up, Ken, are there any moments that we haven't talked about that you want to touch on? Either little fun moments or, like I said, had to cut some things for time because there's so much to discuss. So I wanted to be sure to share that opportunity.
Yeah, it's so funny. You had said in emails before, we'll cut some things for time. And I was like, it's fine. We can. I'm looking at where we are at the episode, and long episodes are certainly welcome here by our ForceCenter community. We would be going for another hour. But based on just what we're pulling out of it. So everyone's talking about it, and Robert Rodriguez playing guitar with Tem and Grogu from the past, but also just to hear him talk about it, he's really fascinating. And I'll say this: I think his 2 episodes are really good, and I think he did such a great job. He hit his normal high standards. I think some other directors in this series eclipsed his high marks, which is saying a lot. But so that was my critical look at the season, and his episodes as the director did. I don't know. Steph Green, that's my favorite episode. Bryce Dallas Howard, oh my god, everyone else did so great. But I gotta say, I really loved watching him just work here as an executive producer, involved directing, but as an artist, he's an interesting cat, man. I make those references all the time to the Favreau, the chef show thing where he's talking about cooking pizzas for Guillermo del Toro, and he's an artist to the core. The playing the music, the artist energy, the connective energy, that made me definitely want more of him in Star Wars, where prior to that, I was like, love the work. His episodes were good. I like some of the other episodes better. And that's like my critical brain. But my Star Wars heart was really impressed by just everything he said and everything he brought to the table as a creator and as a true artist. I really like that. That kind of had an impact on me.
Yeah, no, and just his influence on the big picture of his passion for this character, and really balancing he's known as the guy who does wild, big, fun action scenes, right? But he's also a person who clearly relates to that idea of that everything that's represented in Boba Fett and Rancor, and just because you can be the strongest in the room doesn't mean that has to be all you are. Yeah. I think that spirit, that deep understanding of that part of the story is everywhere, and that's all coming through Rodriguez. That was perhaps one of the most impactful moments to me. That idea of playing music with the cast and crew it's really fun, and it's great to see him and Tem singing and people dancing and the jokes with the Grogu puppeteers, all great and fun. But then that moment where he's like, I find this is a great way to bond with collaborators. I, played drums for a big chunk of my life. Not something I do anymore, but it just really deeply resonated with me when he said, like, you have to trust people when you're playing music, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're just trying to make sure you're on beat with somebody and anticipate where they're going, the feeling when you're playing music and you can sense somebody's just going to do like a break or a weird little rhythm and you got to follow them because you're in sync. That so erases the, like, I am the director. My name is here on the call sheet. You are the actor. Like, it gets rid of all of that status and you're just people making something organically in the moment together. That was such a great insight. It was really moving.
Yeah, I hear this a lot around these Star Wars BTS stuff, or even some of the Marvel stuff, or anytime you watch something. Look, not everything is going to be a home run. And you might still be listening to this and go, hey, the BTS is great. Still don't love Book of Boba Fett. That's totally fine. But everything that they brought to the table, the seriousness, the heart, the dedication, the passion that they brought to this project, I think was all within good intentions. And you're talking about the trust. You're talking about the music. Look, I play the tambourine badly. That's the only instrument I play. But it is about giving yourself over to the moment and what you're talking about earlier of knowing yourself and being the best you, knowing who you are, knowing what you bring to the table, and then having to release it to the larger group to make something wonderful. Think of improv, music, so many other examples. It's not just about the arts. It could be anything else out there in your job, your life, your relationship. You do the best you, and you give yourself to the bigger cause. There comes that trust. So it's a big. He is truly an artist. I mean, watch him make a pizza, watch him make a movie. He approaches it with the same spirit. And I really, as someone who grew up having to, read his book for credit in college, you know what I mean? Like, to go for that to, like, that's what I think I just really respect more than anything about what he brought to the table here.
Yeah, absolutely. I got a bunch of other things, but I'm just going to say one in the interest of time. I did like everything that they concentrated on with Fennec Shand and with Ming-Na Wen. I didn't include it as much because I didn't feel like there was as many revelations or big ideas, but it was such a great celebration of Fennec talking about how important the character was to balance Boba Fett. And I love just all of the moments of Ming-Na Wen geeking out about riding a bantha and seeing Mark Hamill and sort of implying that sometimes Tamora Morrison had to be like, what, pull it back now.
I love that sequence, and you're right to point it out. And I love there's that one shot of it's like her, it's Teb, and then the Mark Hamill in the Jabba's palace set. Whoa, like that kind of blew my mind for a second. I geeked out there, so I get it. Yeah, that's great.
Absolutely great stuff. Any other thoughts for you as we wind down here?
No, we'll force ourselves to wrap it up here.
Yeah, we will stop here because we have to contain ourselves every once in a while. Ken, where can people find us?
Hey, you can find us on Twitter at ForceCenter Pod. We're on Instagram and YouTube as well. Big live show on May 13th. If you're listening this week, we'll get the information out there, 4 p.m. Pacific on our YouTube channel. Facebook page is ForceCenter Podcast. You can hear us on Acast, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and more. Just search, you'll find us. Merch is available at tpublic.com/user/ForceCenter. And you can support us directly at patreon.com/ForceCenter. Don't forget, at Star Wars Celebration on Thursday, 2 p.m., we'll be in the podcast stage area as guests on Alex and Molly Damon's Star Wars Explained show. Look for us there. You can follow me at Ken Napzok or go to my website, kennapzok.com. Joseph, what about you?
Yeah, you can find me Twitter, Instagram, TikTok is at Joseph Scrimshaw, and you can go to my website, josephscrimshaw.com for all my comedy adventures, comedy albums, shows I've written or written for. You can find out soon about some performance events coming up, and you can check out my podcast, Obsessed. If you're an MCU fan, the most recent episode of Obsessed is a discussion of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. So if you're interested, check that out. But for now, for myself, for Ken, for Robert Rodriguez playing guitar with Boba Fett, this has been ForceCenter.